You've been long. Well. Visit me again, whenever you please.
We are now approaching the Shrine of Winter, which I always thought was one of the more intriguing locations in Dark Souls 2. Because in vanilla Dark Souls 2, we didn't really know the significance of this location, but I always thought it was very interesting that it was in here, in this particular spot. It kind of serves as a gateway between the 4 starter areas and the late game of Castle Drangleic. But now with the Crown of the Ivory King expansion, we can use the Shrine of Winter to transport ourselves to the distant land of Aleum Lois. These ice-covered warriors were once the soldiers of the great kingdom of Aleum Lois, but since the entire kingdom has been frozen over, they now are cold, hollow shells of their former selves. We learn a little bit more about the history of Aleum Lois with the Ivory Warrior Ring, which reads, Aleum Lois existed to subdue the raging flame, but when the ivory gates were flung open, the land grew cold and lifeless. So, the Raging Flame here is essentially the cause of all the troubles in Aleum Lois. Aleum Lois is built over, essentially, a portal to the Old Chaos, which is not a nice place to be, putting it lightly. And in an attempt to counteract this, they essentially froze the entire kingdom. But in doing so, it essentially wiped out all life in the kingdom, and now only hollows and animated dead exist. But what I find really cool, though, is Aleum Lois was essentially built for this very specific reason of protecting and guarding this danger from deep below the earth, as we learn in the Ice Rapier, which reads, "Rapier wielded by sorcerers of Aleum Lois, imbued with a magic that is released with a strong attack. A great protective wall was erected to protect Aleum Lois from the encroaching chaos, and these sorcerers were among its defenders." So we learn here that the old chaos deep below the kingdom was approaching the surface. All the fiery demonic forces from down below were going to eventually reach the surface and overtake any lands they saw. And so Aleum Lois was built to prevent this, and its entire army and all its great knights were tasked with keeping the old chaos at bay, and none more so than the king of Aleum Lois himself, the Ivory King. And out of all the kings we find in Dark Souls 2, with perhaps the exception of King Vendrick himself, I would say the Ivory King is definitely the most tragic. You can't help but feel sorry for the guy once we learn more about what his ultimate fate was, and it makes for a fascinating story. The Rampart Golems are another one of the many ice-themed warriors we'll run into in this area, and their lance can be quite deadly if they manage to hit you with it. Thankfully, they can be easily sidestepped, so they weren't too much of a problem for me here, but they still can be dangerous if you aren't careful. But the description for their weapon reads, "The golems were charged with the containment of the creatures of chaos within the boundaries of the wall. When the doors of Aleum Lois were flung open, the place turned frigid and lifeless, but the golems remained dutifully on guard." So this just shows that the Ira King knew that he was going to need some kind of warriors or creatures that could withstand the cold, frigid temperatures that would be brought about once his plan to stop the old chaos was enacted. It just shows that this wasn't an impromptu decision, and where the Ivory King was trying to protect both his kingdom and his people, but at the same time he knew that the greater threat lay deep below the earth, where the old chaos dwelled. And once we obtain the means to get there, we too will see why the old chaos was so feared.
Turn away and never look back. No one must ever find that which is sheltered in the layer of noise.
Now, the Eye of the Priestess is a very important item, particularly for the Crown of the Ivory King expansion, because the first boss of this area is actually invisible until you obtain this item, and I have to say, it is next to impossible to fight that boss without being able to see it. So we definitely need this item to proceed, but it also has the added effect of revealing any invisible warriors. So now all those soldiers and rogues that attacked us in the Shaded Woods will now be visible with the Eye of the Priestess. So that's a cool added bonus they give to you, but as I said, the primary reason we need this is to see the first boss of this area. The Eye of the Priestess reads, "The eye of the first priestess who watched over Aleum Lois allows one to see the unseen. All the great priestesses replaced one of their birth eyes with this, returning it after their term was complete." And at this point, it doesn't seem like there's been another priestess to take on the mantle, as we find the eye dwelling within the corpse there. But that's probably just a sign to show how far the kingdom of Aleum Lois has fallen, and how it's trying to hang on to what little it has left to protect the rest of the world from the old chaos, even if it means the kingdom itself has just fallen into a cold, lifeless ruin of its former self.
Go back. Avaa is watching. Go back. This dead city has nothing to offer. Go back. Do not seek the old chaos, nor its twisted flame.
I really like the fight with Avaa. I think Avaa, the King's Pet, is one of the more unique fights in the entire Dark Souls series. That I can't think of too many times when you fight an ice tiger in video games, so that alone is pretty cool to me. But we learn more about Avaa with its boss soul description. Soul of Avaa, who served the Ivory King. Each of the Ivory King's 7 beasts was conferred a specific duty. Avaa's was the guardianship of the king's beloved Child of Dark. So the king had several of these great tiger beasts to do specific duties across the land. And Avaa here guarded someone very important to the king and very important to the story of this realm. And that is the Ivory King's bride, who is also a child of the dark, and one who, unlike her sisters, is actually going to help us in our quest.
Avaa could be bested. Who are you? This land is barren, cursed by the old chaos. It gave birth to atrocities, and the people fled in fear. Until our Lord, the Ivory King, came. My dear Lord, a most true king. It was with his magnificent soul that he built a Lois and contained the spread of chaos. But the chaos would not be sated, and the king gave his own soul. Inevitably, the king was drained of vigor and plunged into the chaos's heart. The Lois was frozen in time, its leader lost. I remain here to contain the chaos, honoring my Lord's wishes. Perhaps one day he will return. There is nothing here save that accursed flame. I have but one wish. That my dear Lord might be freed from that unspeakable chaos. I haven't the strength to help him myself, but perhaps one such as you. Though I am yet to know your name, stranger, will you lend me your strength? Kind visitor, I thank you. Let me open the path to chaos. And please, do all you can. Faithful knights followed their lord into the chaos. But not one of them returned. The king's dutiful subjects waited patiently for his homecoming. But it was too long a wait to bear. The knights of Lois await a new leader,
wonder who will guide them into chaos.
You